the Tuesday, April 21st, 2026 Mount Lebanon Planning Commission. Roll call: Dave Horniak.
Here.
John Schrott here. Paul Ostergaard absent. Matthew Clark.
Here.
Seth Davis.
Here.
Municipal staff: Dan Dazara from Gateway.
Here.
Ian McMeans, Assistant Manager, Municipal Planner.
Here.
Greg Wharton. Jeff Sigler is our Commission Liaison. Do not see him this evening. First of all, we'd like to introduce Seth Davis as a new member of the Planning Commission. This is his first meeting. Take it easy on him. Statement on public comments. The Planning Board will accept public comments with each agenda item. Please note that a repetition of comments made by previous speakers is not necessary for them to be considered. If a group of residents shares an opinion, we suggest that you select a spokesperson. Public comments is not the appropriate time for prolonged debate or for personal comments about or questions directed to fellow residents, the board members, municipal staff, or any developer. In consideration of everyone's time, we encourage residents making public comment to refrain from repeating comments made by previous speakers. For any Zoom participants, if you wish to comment during public comment, agenda items use their raise hand function. During the public comment agenda item, the chair will recognize you. When recognized, be sure to unmute your line and announce your name and address for the record. If you have multiple or complicated comments, you're welcome to submit them to us in writing. We ask that you hold your remarks to 5 minutes, and we will let you know when your time is up. We appreciate your efforts to be respectful and ask that the audience refrain from any behavior that is disruptive or might intimidate free speech. The first agenda item is that each April meeting, we need the Planning Board to conduct a reorganization and elect members as chair, vice chair, and secretary. Do we have a motion for such?
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Chair John Schrott, Vice Chair Paul Ostergaard, and Secretary Matthew Clark.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Meeting minutes. The approval of the minutes from the March 17th, 2026 meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from March 17, 2026.
Aye, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain since I was not in attendance.
Thanks, Seth. Motion passes. So old business. Request for recommendation for final approval of a site plan. The municipality of Mount Lebanon owns the property at 900 Cedar Boulevard where the Middle and Seymour fields are situated. The project includes improvements and upgrades to the ball field surfaces, field lighting, fencing, bleachers, sidewalks, expansion of the southern parking area, and stormwater facilities. In 2025, the Planning Board recommended and Commission approved the 2026 to 2030 Capital Improvement Program, which includes this project to be completed in 2026. Dan, do we have a engineer's letter on this?
We do. I have a letter dated April 16th, 2026 regarding the review of the Middle and Seymour field renovations. We've reviewed the plans with latest revision date of April 1st. We've also reviewed the stormwater management report with revision date of March 2026. At this time, as you said, there's a recommendation for final approval is being sought. If you recall, the plan was at the Planning Board the last meeting. I'll just highlight my comments, which are really the changes that were made at the request of the Planning Board. The drive aisle width of the parking lot has been increased from the ordinance minimum of 20 feet to 24 feet wide. Photometrics have been provided for the sports lighting to show the foot candles at a grade at 25 feet beyond the property line. In accordance with the ordinance, lighting levels are below the 0.5 foot candles recommended as the maximum level on adjoining properties. Speed humps have been added to the parking lot drive aisle in the loop road. After reviewing the left turn distance on Cedar Boulevard with the municipal traffic engineer, this turn lane could be extended to allow additional cars to queue in the lane without impeding traffic flow onto Cedar Boulevard. So that's something that can be accomplished. The seating area along Cedar Boulevard has been redesigned to improve maneuverability and an upper seating area for patrons to place their chairs. And then lastly, additional landscaping, specifically shrubs, have been added along the parking lot bypass lane to improve lot screening and prevent vehicles from parking in the lawn areas. That's really all my comments. I believe somebody here tonight is here if there's any questions
We
to
want to have
discuss
a
the changes.
presentation of the,
Sure.
Where
yeah,
you are?
just reintroduce myself. I'm Michael McCormick with Gateway Engineers. I'm a landscape designer working on this project. Short presentation that we put together essentially highlights what Dan just covered to put some visuals to those. The only thing I'll add to that, with the lighting, we were able to run photometrics for the parking lot as well, just to show what the example layout would be with that. Those are lights that you've already used and installed before. We just wanted to put that on paper and show that that was feasible. So those are our changes that Dan had just reviewed here. So the parking lot drive aisle, number one here, initially this center, I guess it doesn't show up too well there, but the center of the parking lot was a 20-foot wide minimum aisle initially. That's your code minimum for that. There's a request to increase that a few feet to 24 feet to just allow for increased maneuvering, to accommodate some larger vehicles, pickup trucks, have that lot flow a little bit better in the center. On the sports field with the photometrics, the initial photometric plan, we did have a small area that was slightly above that half-foot candle maximum. So in the upper right where that says kind of property line, 25 foot, if you go down there, there was a sliver of that where we were getting that 0.9 foot candles. We had the lights readjusted to get down to 0.33. So we're under that 0.5 max on that corner. Photometrically on the parking lot, these are the outputs that would be visualized on that solar array for the parking lot. The average here is just, it's 1.22 foot candles. That's less than what would be on your downtown streetscape at night. It's meant for like a low-level security light there. The only thing a little misleading on that rendering, ignore that thing that looks like a building. That was misinterpreted by the lighting designer. It's not a building, that's just the stormwater pond. So it's just a flat area there, no building. You can see with that these are shielded internally, so there's a cutoff on the back of those fixtures, so that light is being put toward the lot, not bleeding back on the property line or on Cedar Boulevard.
so just to be clear, all of those light fixtures have cutoffs, so they're only focusing the light on the pavement.
Yeah, there's nothing, these are not floodlights, everything, nothing is going above 90 degrees. It's all going down. That I would have to defer to Public Works Maintenance. I don't know if that's under operations.
So let's get through Gateway's presentation, then we'll have time for public comment, just to kind of keep with the structure and flow of the agenda. But to answer the question, we do have in our ordinances like open and closing time for parks. It does kind of vary by season sometimes, but the main lights on the fields can definitely be on a timer. I think we were thinking for the parking lot lights, though, we were going to use those little solar lights that we have within Main Park. They're on some of the walkways that go through the park, and those are motion activated, so that then they can go to a dimmer state after a certain time, definitely on a timer. But then if there's a motion activation, if someone's walking to their car, we want it to get a little brighter so that they'll be able to see. Kind of like if someone's walking through the park
exactly.
at night, they're on a motion sensor that they'll get a little brighter.
And so with that too, like when those are on the full brightness, the max there that we're showing, it's 4.3, 4 foot candles. So that would be 4 foot candles right under that light would be similar to what's going to be out of a light on a streetscape. But that's just right in front of the light. In the parking lot, the speed humps that were added, there are 2 along the bypass road in the back to break that up, and then 2 in the main part of the lot, just for additional traffic calming. the Cedar Boulevard turn lane, this is something that's been looked into from a traffic standpoint, and there is, opportunity to make some improvements with that based on what is existing there. The seating area on Cedar Boulevard, this is going to be a raised concrete step that can be used for seating. So that's going to extend all the way up to Cedar Boulevard. There are 2 stairs that will allow you to walk down to field level. But some of the changes we made to that is there's an upper terrace to that that's at the sidewalk level. We'll have a break in the guide rail 5 feet wide to walk through. And that's a situation where you could stand, lean on the rail, look out over the field, or then if you wanted some other seating areas, you could walk down. And we were able to increase the width of those seating areas so that you could sit on it, or you'd actually have room to put a chair on that flat level as well, on any level. And then additional parking lot landscaping. Before, we were just essentially looking at it, minimum tree numbers, but we've added a lot of shrubs to help with the screening of the parking lot. So I know this was a question before, if you see that the development boundary, that's that red line right there, we would be adding trees along the parking lot to supplement what would be removed on the Mount Lebanon side for the new parking areas. So there are some trees that would be cut down for the new lot. We would add those trees back in. And then screening along that side prevents people from parking in between the trees. And then the area that is between the bypass road and the parking lot, there's a short 5-foot wide landscape strip that is going to prevent people from parking there. And then we screen vehicle headlights as well. If you have any questions about tree species, things like that, we can get into that, but it's all native planting, typically things that have been used around Mount Lebanon before. And then I've got a final, just kind of overall rendering. And then if there's any questions, this would be a good point to kind of leave that up, and then we can point to things on that.
Well, let's move to public comment, and you can ask your questions during the public comment period. I know there are several people that have signed up wishing to comment this evening, so we'll go by the list of how you sign in. So the first is Mr. High School, if you want to come up. State your name and address.
Jeff High School, 217 Veland Drive. This little presentation did clear up some questions that we had, but also raised a few others. But before I get to that, let me just say that I vehemently oppose this improvement, if that's what you want to call it. The Veland Drive residents were afflicted by the installation of the artificial turf field 10 years ago or so. And when I came up here, stood here and, voiced my opinions about that, it felt like we were completely ignored. Construction went on without any care or concern for our opinions. But that's in the past. There are definitely improvements to be made on this, parking lot, and also the congestion that occurs on the sidewalks during sports events. The terrace would help. I don't know if that size of a terrace would be sufficient, but I know from my 217 Veland Drive bedroom window, especially during summer months, we can see lights, hear screams of sports events or whatever's going on down at the fields. And I don't think right now that includes Seymour Field. That's only the Dixon and Middle fields. So bringing that even closer to a residential neighborhood seems a little bit goofy to me. There's obviously, I don't know how, I would ask Dan, how do you plan to create a wider turning lane with no space to widen it, not only at the entrance to the parking lot there, but also 100 feet down the road at Mayfair Drive. It's a very dangerous intersection, multiplied where we have to turn in with our kids across incoming traffic. And you're talking about having school buses use a turning lane that's essentially wide enough for 2 motorcycles. cutting across traffic. There's no way that a school bus could use the turning lane that's there now. I know that they do, but it's, something needs to be addressed with that if this is gonna go through. I know that there's a covenant that protects the land that is in the corner there, and it looks like that may be unaffected. I'll let some of my other neighbors speak to that, but I just want to go on record by saying that I, as a V-Lane Drive resident, vehemently oppose this development in its current form. Thank you.
Does someone from Gateway want to address the curb cut and the change in the curb cut for the ingress and egress from what currently exists?
You're speaking about the driveway at Cedar Boulevard there?
Yes.
Yes, so that is utilizing the existing curb cut right now.
But it looks like the curb cut is the same, but you've
Yes.
pulled the parking lot so that the access is more of a 90-degree.
Correct. Yes, right now it's essentially, there's not much stacking room when you're leaving that parking lot. So by pushing that in, there's a split there, there'd be a planted median to initiate that one-way loop that's going through the parking lot. So that allows, there would be less congestion at that entrance because you're not blocking ingress and egress, and there's not parking that's right at the entrance there.
Rob Graziano.
Hello, everyone. My name's Rob Graziano. I'm at 249 Veland Drive. I too vehemently oppose this project, and I do appreciate Michael's presentation. I think it is reassuring to see that there was a good amount of thought and detail that went into this. But I'm just going to bring up two sort of separate points, and I echo everything that Jeff said. So again, I'm on the record vehemently opposing this project. I think those funds could be much better used at the main park, 100 other places. The one concern I have is that sliver lane that goes up. Now that I see that and I see the two lanes of parking, I don't see how that's going to play out. So in other words, when you guys start digging and we start moving that back, plus we're going to try to sneak shrubs in there and vegetation, which I think is great. I just don't see how that's going to not start to go past that red line. Like that lane looks really, really, really thin at the top, and that's the one point I'd like to drive home. So the second point is more, I'll just give an anecdote. I was in a very serious car accident at the corner at the intersection of Cedar and Mayfair, and I'm a lifelong resident of Mount Lebanon. My kids were in the car, and it was just a horrible event. And so to echo Jeff's point, I would not spend an ounce of effort putting more traffic and more congestion in this area at all. To Jeff's point, there's people drinking in the parking lots that are non-Mount Lebanon residents. A lot of the traffic is non-Mount Lebanon residents. I'd say probably 50 or 60% of the people. We talk about buses, but Mount Lebanon isn't a busing community. So where are the buses coming from that need all this space? They're not Mount Lebanon residents. So I think this project really caters towards non-residents. And what Jeff said is it doesn't really take our considerations as residents, taxpayers. I do appreciate the thoroughness of the drawings. I think it's well done, but those are my two biggest concerns. Is that area needs a cop at all times. People fly on Cedar. I know it's a state road. That's what I was told. I've been told a bunch of different things, but people fly on Cedar. They go 40 easily at all hours of the day. At any time you can see kids riding dirt bikes down Cedar. It's a disaster right now, and it's not a super safe area. I don't think this project makes it a safer area. Thank you for my time. Again, I vehemently oppose this. Rob Graziano, 249 Veland. Thank you.
Does Gateway want to address the school bus issue and the ability to get the school buses in and out of that parking?
So we did run turning templates in the event that a school bus would enter that lot. And that turn at the end, turning in is doable, the turn at the end is doable. It's on the tighter end of doable. I will say it wasn't designed primarily for school buses, but it would be functional.
And the loop road is a single lane, right?
lane.
Single lane, one way.
Correct.
Thank you. Ms. DiNardo?
Hi, my name is Cheryl DiNardo. I live at 1076 Cedar Lane. And I was here last time, 10 years ago, when you decided to do the first part of the parking lot. And we were under an understanding then that that was going to be it. So this is kind of disheartening that you're going to more than double that parking lot. Just this weekend, I drove by and there was kids there all weekend doing activities. There was plenty of parking. The only time I've noticed there hasn't been enough parking is when they have the baseball tournaments. And that might be 20 days out of the year. So I don't know if you can tell us what discussion you had about how this is fiscally responsible doing this. Because it's only 10 days out of the year you don't have enough parking. 10 to 20. It's baseball tournaments. That's when you see the activity that's at the most. Can I go up there and point some things out?
Absolutely.
When you did this 10 years ago, and what I'm going to address is the traffic on Cedar Boulevard. It's horrible sometimes. I live right here on Cedar Lane. I'm the house way down here. So when we come out, we used to have parking along here. There was enough for about 4 cars originally 10 years ago. Our commissioner, Kelly, at the time, we asked her, well, if you're going to put all this parking space over here, would you be kind enough to remove these 4? The answer was, yes, we'll remove those 4. What they did, when I came home from work, I'm a nurse, and I work 12-hour shifts. So I came home after working 3-hour shifts and didn't notice what was going on. They had moved everything over closer to us, all the lines for cars, traffic. So what they did, they made a parking space over here. They tripled it on this side. So we thought we were going to get rid of 4 because of all this, but they added this whole strip of parking over here, which is so congested. So now when we come out of the lane, I have to go on oncoming traffic, you know, because I can't make this, and I drive a compact car. I'm not that bad to drive. So when I come on, I can't even make this turn. I have to go into oncoming traffic. And then when our garbage, I really wish we would put this money towards collecting garbage. But an extra $400 wasn't a big appreciated. But, so now I have to take my garbage down here, and the line for cars that come is right there. You can see it. There's centimeters between the grass and where cars can drive. So you try to put your garbage right here without getting killed. I have to, I go and I throw it over. And sometimes it ends up in the street. So it's really discouraging how much traffic is here. And this is a neighborhood. You know, I can't believe that you want to develop this into something that it's not. You know, I mean, can't you do this somewhere else where there's more space? This is a neighborhood. This is a busy street. You figure the 5 busiest streets are Washington Road, Fire Hill, Cedar. People are going to Galleria. People are going to the mall. And now we're going to add this congestion?
But those are all 35. This is only 25. This is supposed to be a residential, wide school. The school's right there.
Yeah.
I mean, people
And
fly down the street.
this road is not wide enough. I plead with you, if you're going to add all this parking, get rid of this street parking so we can have some room and we don't get killed when our garbage out. You know, please do that. And the other thing you can do, this is great, but where you need some shrub is here too. So when you're driving down the street, it doesn't look like giant even parking lot. You know, what you did to facilities it just is an eyesore. That landscaping down by the facilities on Cedar Boulevard is nothing but an eyesore. Please get a different landscaping company, because you can do the same thing you did here, you can do here, especially since you're putting lighting, to give us some, you know, aesthetic pleasing, something pleasing to the eye. But I agree with my neighbors. This is not warranted.
Thank you. Ms. Davis? Or Mr. Davis? Who's going to do it in tandem?
We're package deal. So we live at
there 32 years.
Our issue is, like it's been stated, it's a 25-mile residential area. And pulling out of our driveway, we could get hit pretty much almost every day because of the blind curve coming from the light, as well as the hill from the other direction.
Years ago, when they moved the parking lane over, which makes complete sense. I'm sorry, but for kids walking on the sidewalk, it was a nightmare. Kids walking right on this, with this cars right next to them. So the parking lane moving made sense. Don't disagree with it. Problem was, when you moved the parking lane, you created a blind spot coming from the light. So anyone traveling faster than 25 doesn't see us leaving our driveway, and we can't see them. And if they're going faster than 25, they're like, I've had people jump the curb, hit my garbage cans. And then on this side, you have a hill, you're cresting the hill, so anyone being under the hill, you can't see. So when we leave our driveway, and I know we're one house, I get it. Actually, it's two houses that share a driveway, but we look right, you look left, you look right again, and then you start moving. There's somebody,
On top of
sorry,
it.
some kid coming out of high school, it's like on top.
Right.
I don't know what we can do about it, because like I said, I don't necessarily disagree with moving the parking lane, I think it was.
I think you
But our
can keep the
concern
parking
is-
lane where it's at, and all you have to do is put lines and say no parking.
Well, it had to be,
But our,
it didn't make sense for people to park and then cross Cedar to go to the game, kids especially,
I don't want the parking on our side anymore.
our concern is, this is gonna create more traffic, more people, and it was already said, there was a night where my husband had to go out at 1 a.m. because people were still on the field. They were there with their coolers, they were there with their dogs, they had their music playing, and I have a 7-year-old trying to sleep upstairs. The lights that are on that field are manually turned off, and sometimes they never go off. And where we are situated, we see those lights in our house, and it sounds like the people are in our living room. And I've called the rec, and they have said to me that they're only supposed to be on the field till 10:45. They were there till 11:30 on Tuesday night. And it's not Lebo. It's adult leagues, it's leagues that are renting, and we understand that's a source of revenue, but them saying to me, call the police when they're there beyond 10:45, I could call them every night. It doesn't make sense. And I just worry that this is just gonna bring more games. It's gonna make it more of a place for revenue, which I understand, but it concerns me. The lot doesn't concern me as much as what it's gonna do to the community.
And I love this.
I do love that because I walk a big boxer, and I get very agitated, and my 7-year-old will say, don't they read the sign? Because it says, do not block the sidewalk, and I have to walk my 7-year-old and my dog into the street because people are there with their lawn chairs and their coolers. And again, they tell me to just call the police, but I shouldn't have to do that in my neighborhood every day.
But it looks great.
Yeah. But
I'm not against the field, like, I love the field, I love the activity. There's, I'm sorry guys, but I'm not really against this. I'm just against not
The
using,
safety.
we were promised 10:45 at night, lights shut off, fields closed. And when it's a school night, and it's a Tuesday night, and it's 11 o'clock at night, it's just not cool.
And we are not happy with the way people fly.
People do fly.
And you
here,
put in
but
that
that's
turning
not-
lane on Mayfair, that makes no sense, because it's not even a car's length wide.
Yes.
And it just invites people to zip around, to make that turn.
And take it out.
It doesn't make sense to me. Every time I see someone go on it, it doesn't make sense. That's all.
You got a twofer.
Thank you. You got a twofer, right?
John, do you mind if I
Yeah,
add a
please.
couple things? So on the question of lighting, I checked with our Public Works Director, and he said, yes, to your point, the existing lights at Middlefield are on 4 manual switches right now. The new lights that are proposed that'll cover both Middle and Seymour Fields will have remote programming that we can control with an app. So the lighting will be significantly upgraded there, that we'll have a lot more control over when they turn on and off in accordance with our ordinance requirements for when the parks are supposed to close. And the The lights on Dixon on the other side are newer lights, so they're on a timer. And to the point about traffic on Cedar Boulevard, the municipality is just finishing up a joint active transportation plan with the Borough of Dormont. And the active transportation plan has several recommendations in it for considerations for means of traffic calming and other things throughout the community. And I know the mobility board will be very involved with, recommending implementation of the active transportation plan. So I can definitely pass along some of these comments to the mobility board to, indicate that there's resident interest in seeing the board look at Cedar Boulevard in the context of the, pending active transportation plan too.
Hey, Chair, can we have a follow-up question to these comments?
Yes.
So just to be clear, the new lights will be on a timer,
Yes.
and who controls those lights? Is it the township, or is it a?
Yeah, the municipality will.
Okay, so you guys will set it at a hard 10:45, automatically lights will go, no exceptions.
I don't know the ordinance off the top of my head. I believe, and I'm just saying I believe our parks times do change by the season. So like during the summer hours, right, whatever it is, it'll be an automatic off, yes. But I believe during the summertime, parks are open a little bit later. During the wintertime, they close a little earlier. But yeah, that's why, yeah.
And Chair, I didn't realize it was a sign up, but I'd like to sign up.
We'll get to that here in a minute. The last person on the sign in, and then we'll go to those who haven't signed in yet.
Can I jump something?
Yeah, Dave.
Just a real quick question, Ian. Regardless of what we do with the parking lot and the field, what pressure or what urgency can the planning board place upon the mobility group as far as making this a priority? Because I agree. I'm down there probably 2 or 3 times a week, with my boys. And it is dangerous on all fronts of all seasons. I live over in Sunset Hills, and we have traffic call them speed humps, whatever you want to call them. And I'd be interested to see if that's something that we can explore here, along with the parking along the Cedar Boulevard, whether it's an elimination or a modification or designated as loading zones, and that's where the school buses sit for special events. And it's just dedicated to that. So that way it's a time dependent of when that is actually being utilized. So if we could put a little bit of weight, that'd be most appreciated, so. Yeah, I agree.
It is a municipal street. It is signed as 25. It's not designed as 25. The mobility board, I think, will be receptive to that. The unfortunate element is this municipality, I think, repaved most of Cedar and didn't employ the complete streets policy that's been on the books for several years. But there's opportunity to make changes there. I don't think the weight needs to be put on the mobility board. Sorry, Dave, but I think it needs to be put on the municipality to prioritize this in budget.
It's wherever that weight needs to go.
Yep.
Put the blanket on, and then, but I do agree with the comments that have been shared, so.
Yeah. I would caution against.
Yes, I wouldn't do speed bumps. You kind of have.
Emergency vehicles with snow clearing measures, and those 2 things sometimes be disruptive.
Yeah, you can.
Secondary streets sometimes make more sense, but I just.
The toolkit that's coming with the active transportation plan is going to create a broader set of toolkits than has existed in the municipality now. Because this is currently a transit route also, speed humps aren't always welcome for people on the bus. The bus stops aren't heavily utilized here, and this bus is on the chopping block in this segment to go away. So I wouldn't want to, put that there, so just to monitor it. But to the aspect that people have brought up in terms of parking being an induced demand type of thing, they didn't say induced demand, but induced demand is you build it, they will come. And then they'll fill it up. You build it, they will come. So I think this is a question for the engineer and otherwise, where is the bike parking? The comprehensive plan specifically calls out adding increased infrastructure around active transportation in our parks. I would encourage that and how to get folks here as well.
All right, let's move on. Steve Westmiller, did I say your name correct?
Name is Steve Westbler. I live at 265 V Lynn Drive. Longtime resident, and I empathize with all of you gentlemen on this. Number one, I do like the field. I think it's been a massive upgrade. Taking care of the drainage and the water has been super. From V-Lynn, I'm part of the lower end of V-Lynn, so our property is protected by the covenant. I do have, from a taxpayer perspective, when I look at the plan as it exists today, the utilization of parking is extremely low. When you look at the hours of operation in total versus how often the parking will be filled. And I really pose the question, have you looked at the utilization? Do you have any utilization study? My hunch on it, and I'm an industrial engineer and I was a global operations guy for Emerson, I wouldn't invest in all of what the plan is, okay? When I look at it, there are times that we need more parking spots, no doubt, absolutely no doubt, but those are very rare. Having additional places where we could park is fine. I do have a question as to the need for the pull around and drive out lane. It's great, and if we have unlimited resources, and you all have unlimited resources, I would say no issue with it. Just dole another nickel out of the pocket and take care of it. I do have concerns with people now pulling around and then driving down through there. Are kids going to be safe? The real danger spot is if you've created a lane that people can exit. Are they going to exit at the right pace? Or are they worried about their next event that they're going to go to? And as many people have talked about, what they're worried about is their next baseball tournament that they're running to, because I know I was part of the scene. I was a commissioner of the baseball tournaments. I love the whole complex. And I would really say, do we really need that? Today, we don't have an in and out. People figure it out, right? So we have low utilization, and do we need the extra lane? I would say, where's the utilization study that validates we need that turning lane, that we need that exit out, or because utilization is so low, we're just going to have people do the right thing and take their time and get out of the parking lot appropriately. So those are my comments in total. That I do empathize with you, but I'm concerned on the safety aspect of it. When I was down there the other day, there's a tree that's up on Cedar, broken off. The tree's up above where people walk. We need to have people that walk through the area that make sure it's safe, right? And it's great response. I've called in when I've identified safety issues, and the team's taking care of it. So that's on me for not calling in the latest one. But on this, I want to make sure that from a safety perspective, all the kids in the neighborhood are okay.
Thank you.
Just as a quick response, we did do a parking demand analysis for the main park in its entirety as part of the main park master plan that we finalized last year. And we were at a fairly significant deficiency in main park as a whole, somewhere to the extent of like 200 spaces that we were lacking at that area based on demand.
But when you look in that specific parking lot, and I walk my dog through there 3 times a day, right? I can guarantee you, okay, I'll put the statistics together. There is no way that people are going to walk that far to park in that parking lot.
Right, to go to school or whatever. But Ray, no one's parking there the other way.
To double the width of, or
or even more than double the width of that turn lane as, you know, from a pedestrian standpoint, or a safe, I think that is a safe walking route to mark on for certain houses. You have children walking down the sidewalk at the same time, or walking home from school, let's say, at the same time baseball practice is about to start up, and you have cars that are trying to get in and out at the same time. Yet you have 7-year-olds or 9-year-olds trying to cross essentially 2 lanes of traffic on a sidewalk. Are those cars going to be pulled up onto the sidewalk, waiting for their opportunity to go out onto Cedar, or are they going to wait to let pedestrians cross? Are they going to see the pedestrians? It's a very dangerous area right there. My own kids are 7 and 9 and walk their own dog past there 3 times a day, just like Steve. Has any study been done about that?
We have studied walking routes as part of the comp plan and the active transportation plan, our aforementioned active transportation plan. We did take a look a lot at origins and destinations and the ways people walk to get to things.
Volume at certain times of the day versus school, beginning and end times.
I'll say, right, I mean, at the end of the day, right, this is Mount Lebanon's main park. It's a community park. It's a community field. It's used by several community organizations. And I know from meeting with several residents, that live in the area over the past week and, emailing them, talking to them. I heard from a lot of people about, during heavy usage times, whether it be for the pool, for 4th of July, things like that, that there are cars that find places to park down there on the hillside, in the grassy areas, in their backyards, across the, into that deed restricted space that we're not allowed to construct anything on. But cars find places to park. I had one resident tell me that, they saw cars on the 4th of July pulling up the little walking path that goes up to the pool and parking up behind their house. So there is a need for a little more formalization here. And there is certainly a demand in the scope of Main Park overall for having additional parking.
I understand that, and I appreciate your answer. But I don't know if that addresses what I asked with widening the entrance to this particular parking lot and having pedestrians cross the sidewalk at certain times of the day. When you have high volume activities like baseball practice, baseball tournaments, whatever it may be, where you have 50 cars trying to get into the parking lot, walking afternoon, very same time, school would be cut out, plus pedestrian activity in that area. Would be fair to drop in.
So, Mr. Graziano, in respect of everyone else's time, I believe you had sent me an email at the end of last week, or that was you, sorry. Oh, yeah, and you are Jeff, right, okay. So I think in the interest of time, we have plans available for people to come in during our business hours and look at. So if you want to come in and look at the plans, we can go over them. I'm happy to do that with any resident that wants to look at any plans that are in front of the planning board. I'm not 100% sure, based on Gateway's presentation too, I'm not 100% sure how much we're actually widening that driveway by the entrance into the parking area, but we can look at it with a scale and dig into it and take a look at it. So if you want to come in during our business hours, I'm happy to sit down with you and look at the plans.
Now, I know there's several people that came in after the meeting was started and after the sign-in sheet was brought forward. So now's the opportunity, if you want to have your time at the microphone. Don, and give your name and address, please.
My name is Walter Bashall, 273 V Lynn Drive. So I'm the second to last house on the left. So I'll make a couple comments, and I'll make some recommendations to the commission. One, I also appreciate the fields. I like the fields a lot. I like the utilization of the fields. I think it's a community asset. There's really no question about it in my mind. number one. Number two, Ian, I know exactly the comments that you're talking about with people, that's Jeff Frederick. Okay, so I want to talk about that specifically in a recommendation. So one of the complaints that Jeff has, and I also have, is that at the end of the lot, there's no barrier to driving up into the baseball field. And so the coaches will drive back there, and players will drive back there. And people who just feel like driving back there and parking in his yard to watch 4th of July or to watch baseball do that. So one specific recommendation before this is approved, there should be a prohibition, a physical prohibition from any cars, unless it's a coach with specific approval and a key, from driving back there. It's unnecessary. And in my opinion, dangerous, because the kids, kids, especially around game time and pre-game time, are wandering around back, and there should be no cars back there. At the end of the lot, it should be physically blocked. No cars should be able to get back there, number one.
If I can just interrupt.
Yep.
Do we have removable bollards?
We do, yes.
I'm sorry?
On the plan here, if you want to look at the landscaping plan, it's a little easier to see here. So we have this plaza area that's created, the ADA spaces. All these little dots are bollards that are going to go in to prevent people.
That's going to be blocked.
Yep, and same with this lane between the ADA spaces.
So that would address all of Jeff's concerns. The second thing I would say, just from a safety point of view, to the extent that these guys, who was the lady that was with your garbage? That should be a condition of approval for you guys of this plan to address those safety issues, because there's no question if you put, how many additional spots are going to be, 50 spots?
Almost 48.
48 additional spots, which means that during peak time, people will be utilizing this a lot more. Those safety issues have to be addressed as a precursor to approval of this. And if that type of a safety issue exists, it just needs to be addressed before this goes to the commission. The second thing I would say, and again, this is a safety issue, and I have a specific recommendation, this group should not, under any circumstances, approve this change until the safety issues on Cedar are addressed by whatever other commission that needs to do it. And I didn't know, Rob, I didn't know about your accident, but I will say this, every time I come out on Mayfair and want to make a left, I am taking my life in my hands because it's a blind turn. And so when you think about people, especially kids are running up and down the street, think about the speed with which they're going. Now you've created an environment where school buses and so forth, today it's very hard for them to get in and out of there. Now if you create an environment for them to come in and there's people coming 45, 50 miles an hour the other direction, it's a safety issue. So this plan should not be approved until that issue is properly addressed. The fact that they paved Cedar just recently, who cares? I mean, do it the next cycle. I would say the next thing that I just have around the safety issue is that, first of all, I'm glad you guys are putting the lights on a timer, because they are on, all hours, and people are running around there. But I walk my dogs like these guys do. I walk my dogs all around in there. There's garbage all over that park. And the reason there's garbage back in there is because the kids are back in there partying. So back in the, I haven't done it in a while walking, but I'll go back and break the parties up and, talk to the kids. But as soon as you expand that parking, there's a lot of people back, like 11:45 last night, there was somebody with their lights on my house still, just sitting there with the lights on. So one suggestion I would make to fix that is I would restrict access to the parking after a certain time. Make it midnight, make it 11. And as a precondition to approval of this plan, that parking lot should be unavailable after a certain period of time, because people do come back and sit back there. And for all of these houses that are right up against that, this Cedar Boulevard, you guys all know, it is a thoroughfare from the entire South Hills all the way through into the city. So people are running up and down all nights of the, maybe my time's up.
Yeah, that is your time.
Yeah, all night, they're running up and down all night. So if you leave that parking lot open, you are leaving it open for a lot of activity that does happen. So I would say for all of these safety issues, you should wait, approve after the safety issues are addressed, and then kind of move them on. And by the way, Ian and Dan, how you doing? I do want to say thank you guys, you've done a great job. You addressed all the issues, I didn't have to fuss with the deed, and I appreciate that, so thank you. Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Tom Wardius. I'm a landowner and resident at 233 Veland Drive. In July, I'll have lived there 23 years. Yes, so if I understand, and I want to acknowledge that I've had 2 very helpful visits with Ian in the office, and I've seen the landscape plans for this. It's my understanding that the lot lines, so the rear lot lines are is that black dotted line on the drawing there?
It is.
So we're looking at the, I'm gonna, in the interest of time, I'm gonna restrict my remarks to the parking area, and I'm particularly, my property is in that point where the parking area gets closest to the lot lines, okay? And my reading of the Mount Lebanon Code, and I don't know if it applies to this project, but there is a portion of the municipal code that pertains to surface parking. That would be code 817, sub, 0.7, 0.1, 0.3, and it's specified that there should be a 10-foot setback minimum. As near as we can tell from just looking at this drawing, it appears that the curb will come within about 5 feet of my rear lot line there at 233. So again, we're looking at that area right there. Myself and my neighbor, we're the point of closest approach, for that drive lane to the rear lot lines. So I just want to, I personally am very concerned about that. That's a very small, it appears to be a nonconformity to the code. And I want to point out that the rear of all of these lots, my lot, everybody else's lot on that side of VLIN, that's a steep slope, okay? So today, when Barb or myself, my wife, when we do gardening work on that slope, or we try to maintain the slope, we have to access the slope from the parklet. It's not possible to safely access the slope because of its steepness. It's not possible to do so from the higher part of our lot. So we have to come around and come back. Now, if the drive lane is going to be essentially at our rear lot line and essentially at the point where the slope is going up, becoming steep, then we're not going to be able to do our maintenance. So that's a concern. I just have a concern about the current plan and about, that particular issue, and I understand it's a very narrow strip of land, and I understand you've got to think about turning radiuses and all that sort of things that was covered in the highlight of the project. But I want to mention that for us, for me, and also for my neighbor at 225, that is a very tight, that appears to be non-conforming with the code as I read it. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Is there any response to this question about the 10 feet?
Ian, do you want to?
Sure, and I can confer with our zoning officer on this as well, who's the one who issues official reads on the zoning ordinance. And I did receive your email this afternoon. I didn't have a chance to respond to it. But to Mr. Wardis's point, the drive aisle is about 5 feet from his rear property line, but the drive aisle is, 12 feet wide? Plus there's a small landscaping area before the parking stalls. So the parking stalls themselves are probably 22, 23 feet from the property line. And the section of the ordinance that was referenced says, customer or employee parking for non-residential use shall not be located within 10 feet of any residential district, except where solid screening of at least 6 feet in height is placed on the lot line, in which case no setback shall be required. So I'll, confer with our zoning officer on the kind of official read of that, but the parking itself is over 20 feet away from the lot line.
The whole thing is private parking. So you can't, it's not a separate thing.
Zoning defines parking as where you put a car and you leave the car. The drive lane is not considered parking. Questions from the board to the engineer?
What options do we, as a planning board, have as far as recommending time restrictions for parking lots and closures and things of that nature? Short of making a recommendation.
Right. Restricting times on parking lots, I mean, it can be difficult from an enforcement standpoint. You kind of, like overnight parking in the community, that we have rules about overnight parking, and the police enforce those rules. I think, that the hours of operation of the fields, the times that the lights are on, will probably dictate some of the usage. But as far as hours of operations go, I don't know if there's anything in the zoning code itself that has purview over hours of operations for parking facilities. Also, I can look into that, but I'm not sure.
But this is part of Main Park itself, which has its own hours.
Right.
So it would at least, at a minimum, fall under the hours of Main Park.
Yes, it's within the park boundaries. Yes, that is correct.
Is there the ability to get some bike parking?
Yeah, that's not a problem. There's an ability up near the plaza that we think that we can get a couple bike racks in there. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I would recommend just the standard hoop style.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe even not even there, but like this could be for the parks long-term, maybe closer to the concession stand area, like something eyes on, similar to this, an eyes on the street situation, but just was a question.
And I believe the main park site plan overall had recommended locations throughout the park for bike racks to go in, if I recall correctly.
So if we did want to look to address the traffic on Cedar, and we talked about removing some of those parking spaces that are there, if we're adding 48 here, conceivably, we could remove the 3 or 4, I'm not sure what the exact number is, on Cedar as a condition of that. Is that something that is adjacent to this project, or how would that be done?
No, that would go through the mobility board for a recommendation. They would ask the engineer to do a traffic study. The engineers would look at it and then make a separate recommendation to the commission. So the parking on Cedar is not really part of the the scope of this project. That would go through the mobility board. But I already have notes on here that the planning board strongly recommends that the mobility board advance this through discussions while looking at the new recommendations from the forthcoming active transportation plan.
I will say, one of the advantages of actually having the parking on Cedar is it should slow traffic down. When you have 2 cars parked on either side, it should. When you have wide streets, people go faster. When you have narrower streets, they will slow down. And when you have parking on both sides and it's a tight area, people will slow down. Yes, in theory, not everybody slows down, and I understand that. But when you look at the average speed of traffic, it slows down. Why do you think that there's so many people in this community that park on both sides of the street to enforce kind of a traffic calming on their street, even though the fire department asks them not to, but it's done because it slows people down. And Cedar right there is a bottleneck area where it does slow it down. So I understand that they want to remove the parking spaces, But I also hear that this is a high-volume street, and it's a high-velocity street, much more than it should be. We're not going to be able to put traffic humps and traffic calming on a street of this volume. It's just not going to happen. But there are other solutions, and one of the solutions is actually keeping the parking in place and having the people park, and that slows the traffic down.
Respond to your comment.
Very quickly.
There's not parking on the two sides, only one side, and it does not slow down one bit. So if you gave us a little bit more room, we're not saying you made it a speedway, but if you take it off on one side on the sidewalk, in case you have a little bit of buffer, and you give us a little buffer on the other side, so we don't get people putting out of garbage. So people drive fast, it's not important, that 25 isn't cheap. Every time I go down Cedar Boulevard, I have somebody in my butt, I do this.
All right, thank you.
Every time I go, people in your car.
Other questions from the planning board to the engineer? Is there the ability to get additional landscaping on the cedar side of that parking?
We'll take a look at it.
You know what the width of the entrance is to the question? I know the code calls out minimum or ingress are 22 feet in width in two-way condition. I don't know how wide that is there. Okay.
Yeah, the curb cuts on the sidewalk there now.
It's pretty significant, yeah. I don't know, is there a delineator of those lanes there? It's hard, I mean, yeah.
It comes off that median, it's hard to see there, but there's a point of striped area that would separate that.
And I just want to, I don't want to beat a dead horse, and I appreciate your opinion, Matt, but I believe that there is still a way to explore traffic calming with, on Cedar Boulevard with the speed tables. I, for one, had a project in Presque Isle on a main drive to Presque Isle State Park, high volume, in which we use traffic tables to slow down traffic near an ice cream shop and a bike shop that's right along the main drag. There's even removable speed tables that we can move seasonal. So I'd like to, again, try to re-energize the conversations with the various entities that are reviewing that, so.
Shady Avenue in Squirrel Hill has speed bumps all over it.
I would strongly encourage budget associated with that. I don't know that it's going to come in this cycle, but yeah, I would echo those points. We had an individual hit by someone driving in the Greenhurst intersection. There, it is a problem area from start to end, and needs a holistic look. And the municipality controls it. It is not a state road. It is a municipal-owned road.
Well, the issue in front of the planning board is the parking area and the rehabilitation of the fields. So do we have a motion?
I move to recommend the final approval to the updated site plan at 900 Cedar Boulevard, conditioned upon the municipality addressing comments from the planning board prior to final approval.
I second that.
Motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And it will go to the commission where there will be another opportunity for the community to have input. Moving on to new business. Request for preliminary approval and recommendation for final approval of a site plan. The municipality of Mount Lebanon owns the property at 799 Brafferton Drive, where Sunset Hills Park and Brafferton Field is situated. Project includes improvements and upgrades to the field surfaces, playing ground areas, and expansion of the parking areas and driveways. In 2025, the planning board recommended and the commission approved the 2026-2030 capital improvement program, which includes this project to be completed in 2026. We have an engineer's letter.
We do. I just want to plug in here so I don't lose my letter. I have a letter dated April 16th, 2026, regarding the Sunset Hills improvements. This plan proposes a new parking lot with stormwater facilities, grading to enlarge the existing field, and renovation of the basketball court and the playground and multi-sports area. The improvements were contemplated in the 2022 Main Park Master Plan. The project is located on Brafferton Drive in the Open Space A area, Open Space Active District. So we've reviewed the plans and the stormwater management report prepared for the application. Under Chapter 20, Section 20-403, Open Space A, a municipal park and recreation area are a use by right in the zoning district. Under Chapter 20, Part 8, requirements applying to all districts. The lighting provided for this project is in the form of solar fixtures, and lighting levels meet the ordinance requirements. And there's also fencing as proposed, meeting ordinance requirements for a park. I had a couple minor comments on the stormwater management plan. It is in conformance with the ordinance. The proposed stormwater management facilities include an underground tank and an infiltration trench, which will discharge directly into municipal storm sewer system. I just commented the stormwater note on the cover sheet must be removed from the plan, and that there were not necessary to put pipe anchors on the storm sewer that they had for connection into. Other than that, we've been back and forth, at least on a planning level, looking at this field and how we can make improvements, talking about it for a while. So let the planning commission comment from there.
We have a presentation?
Yeah, well, I'll run through the plan here real quick, and if you introduce. Yeah, sorry, Josh Scanlon, Gateway Engineers. Good to see everybody here. I'll run through this plan and explain the plan. If anybody has any questions along the way, feel free to jump in and ask them. So the plan is the addition of parking to this field to improve accessibility to parking. One of the challenges with this project was to introduce parking, but also maintain the size of the field as much as possible and not reduce the size of it. So there was a study conducted for this field back in 2022. It cited drainage improvements, restroom accessibility, conversion of the infield, fence improvements, improving pedestrian connections, introducing play spaces, and introducing parking. We did a project there about 2 or 3 years ago where we converted the infield to grass, and then we also did some fence improvements. That was, I think, in 2022 or 2023. Those improvements were where the old, you can't really see that, but where the old baseball field used to be on the northeast corner of the plan, and then the fencing around it. These proposed improvements here respect those improvements we previously did. So where we picked up on the improvements of this plan was the addition of the parking and pedestrian access to the basketball courts that would be converted to playground area. So from a site plan perspective, access is off the end of Brafferton Drive at the end of the cul-de-sac there. There's no proposed changes to the cul-de-sac. That'll remain as is. Two-way drive aisle down into the parking lot. There's 21 spaces proposed in that parking lot, 1 ADA space. There's ADA accessibility provided from the parking to a trail that is on the other side of a fence that follows the edge of the field. So that ADA route will take you from the parking to the playground area to the field itself. There is a 10-foot high fence that separates the field and the parking. It's my understanding that the field's used for soccer, lacrosse, so that'll help protect the vehicles that are parked there as well. On Plan South, that's a hillside, a large hillside that goes down into the field. So we're parking vehicles towards the hillside. That's pretty much a safety mechanism. That way people aren't parking towards where people are walking. So they'll park into the hillside make their way across the other side of the parking lot and be able to access that trail there that's fronting the field for accessibility. As mentioned, the parking is lit via solar lights. Traffic is two-way down there. I think it should be worth noting that the drive aisle width through this parking area is 20 feet. It's single stacked parking, so I think it'll provide enough maneuverability to get cars in and out. The reason for that was, again, to respect the space of the field and not over encumber it. The majority of the grading for the site takes place for the parking lot itself. There's a little bit of grading at the northwest corner of the field that essentially is to install a retaining wall. It's less than 4 foot tall, but what that does is allows us to square the field off a little bit. So we had the parking in, we lose a little bit of space of the field. What we did is we pushed the field to the plan east about 30 feet to try and get some of that space back. Stormwater management that's provided by underground detention underneath the parking lot. We do have a bypass system to catch the stormwater from the hillside that's coming down so that it bypasses it around, and we're managing the stormwater from our improvements only. Land disturbance is kept under an acre, so no NPDES permitting is required for this site. And the landscaping that's provided meets code minimum requirements. It's essentially a landscape island in the middle of the parking lot, shrubbery, trees, and then we got a couple trees at each end of the parking lot. The plan as it sits now currently does not have bike racks proposed, but we can fit them in pretty easily here. The other thing I would note is that we're showing a future restroom facility to the north side of the basketball court, the existing basketball court that's there today. That would be a future improvement. The intent is to master plan for it here so that in the future, if it's chosen to pursue that amenity, that can be done without compromising these improvements. The future trail that's shown going around the park too, that would happen in the future. The part of the trail and walking area that's proposed for this plan is going to run along basically the north end of the parking lot, between the parking lot and the field, over to the playground area. So that's the gist of the plan. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to.
Any community members want to comment on this? Board members?
You had mentioned the stormwater facilities. Does the field itself, like, I've never stood on the field. Does it drain properly? Is the stormwater going to handle like a large rainfall on the field, or is it just going to puddle up?
So based on the topography of the field, it's sloped from plan south to plan north. So it's naturally flowing that way. I think right now, today, there's a drainage swale up against the bottom of the slope. And I think that there's been issues that have been vocalized around that in the past. I think this plan will improve that because it's going to catch the water into a bypass system and it'll take it out and around. So I think it'll improve how the drainage functions for the site.
Let me preface, I love this design. I live in Sunset Hills, so this is extremely welcomed. I really like the design and the layout. Kind of reverting back to the conversation we just had, if there was a parking lot to think about closing at night, this is the definition of it, because we may be creating Mount Lebanon's new teenager's paradise, because this is a perfect place to hide. So I'm not sure if that's something we could definitely look into, but it's the seclusion of it's a little concerning, safety-wise. But other than that, I think this is a great design and extreme improvement, especially the walkway that's future pending off the north. I think it's something municipalities should explore further.
Yeah, I would strongly encourage that walkway. It looks like there's currently like an unimproved sidewalk off of Valley Drive, but I don't know
Yes.
where that goes. Is that where this goes?
That is the plan, yes.
Okay.
I'm very excited about this because this has been something that's been, I've kind of been pushing behind the scenes for a while. We jokingly call it the McMeans Donnellen Trail for David Donnellen, our rec director, and myself, who both also live in this neighborhood. But you're correct, Seth. There's a sidewalk actually that runs between two homes on Valley Park Drive. And if you walk back it right now, it just kind of dead ends in a pile of brambles. But you can look up the hill and see Brafferton Field and Sunset Hills Park. So the idea would be to create a walking trail to connect the two of those, because if you connect those, at the other end of Valley Park is Williamsburg Park. So this would actually be a kind of community connector trail to connect two neighborhood parks together. And to walk from Williamsburg to Brafferton right now is up a big hill, down another hill, down a hill again. So it's a little topographically challenging. This may wind up being like several Eagle Scout projects all working together to construct this, but this is something that I personally would love to see happen.
Yeah.
Not to shed too much of my personal bias on this plan.
I think it would be a great connector, just because, like you just said, it intercepts potentially anyone who would want to walk there. It gives them the opportunity. So anything to widen that, support strollers, support any of that, welcome change. And is there a fence along the walkway? I just envision, usually that when we're at the soccer fields, there could be a lot of soccer balls heading into the parking lot into the cars.
Yeah, just to explain this a little bit better, so you got the parking lot, 20 feet back of the parking lot. We have the fence set 1 extra foot past the edge of that parking lot, so that the trail is inside the fence, and for safety reasons. It's 10-foot high fences there, so.
Oh, that'd be fantastic, yeah. Great.
Phil Volio was insistent upon that fence.
Yeah, so there's gate access here, there's also gate access down here as well, so there's multiple points of access that you can coordinate with staff on that.
And there will still be access off the cul-de-sac. Are people still going to be permitted to park in the cul-de-sac? I think yes.
Yes.
This is complicated in the neighborhood, but I think some of it is people parking on people's sidewalks and it gets tight. And hopefully this is a pressure point. I once again induce demand, but I'm hoping it's a pressure relief valve coupled with that trail. Really nice improvement.
I know we've heard from a lot of residents that live on Brafferton Drive and then Fruithurst Drive around the corner that, especially like weekend mornings when, the soccer is active there, or even lacrosse or other activities, that, there's a lot of cars parked in front of their homes, and, ingress and egress up the street can be a challenge. So hopefully this helps alleviate it a little bit.
All right, this is a real minor thing, but I'm kind of a tree nerd. You have a honey locust in the island there, and then you have American elms on the, why don't we have all American elms, since that's a tree that we would like to promote?
If we can make that change, the intent with honey locust in the island there is that it's just a really brutal environment.
Okay, well, you know better than I.
Yeah, honey locust, American elm is almost as good as that. Honey locust is just gonna do better. This might be a situation where you're not gonna sell it much in the winter, so maybe that is not as much of a concern. But, yeah, they're both good trees, but to your point.
Yeah.
I think the honey locust, they're all good trees. I think having a little diversity is maybe beneficial.
It's also that's gonna be shady locations. The elms are out a little bit from the slope of the hill. The honey locust will do well in the shade, or be better in the shade.
This that's an issue with the field now, is the shade on that portion of the field and the slope just make it a very wet portion of the field. So I think this will benefit it. I'm not usually one to just cut down a bunch of trees to add parking, but I think this has multiple co-benefits.
Anything else from the board? All right, do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to grant preliminary approval and recommend for final approval to the updated site plan at 799 Brafferton Drive, conditional upon municipal addressing comments from the planning board, which we don't have any, prior to final approval.
I'll second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next point of new business is the consideration of a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. The municipality is proposing an amendment to Chapter 20 of the Municipal Code zoning to establish definitions for smoke shops, allow for smoke shops as a conditional use in the C2 district, and add use-specific regulations. The planning board is the recommending body for amendments to the zoning ordinance. So the planning board has received the draft of the amendment to the zoning code. Have discussion on specific points in there, recommendations to the municipal planner regarding revisions to that.
I will also note, subsequent to us publishing the agenda for this meeting, we did receive comments back from Allegheny County, which are advisory comments that I circulated to the board in advance of the meeting. So usually I would have mentioned that with the agenda item, but the letter from the county came in after the agenda was published.
Ian, I know that the proposed amendment calls for 3,000 feet from any other smoke shop as measured to the closest, and it defines as measured from the closest point of the applicable property boundary lines, where we're talking earlier in the amendment that they shall not be established or operated within 500 feet of existing school, public playground, public park, adult family daycare, nursery school, place of worship, medical marijuana dispensaries, or medical marijuana growing processing facilities, but we don't define how it's measured from. If we could do the same descriptor
Yes.
as before.
Well, I believe it says is measured from the closest point of the property boundary lines. Is that not?
It says that in 633.4.
Yeah, but
it
not
doesn't
in
say it
633.2.
I understand, sorry.
Yes. So I will make a note of that.
I would also suggest, because we state drive-through windows are prohibited, that self-service retailing, or how we want to state that, because there's a place up in the mall where you can just go walk through and have your card, and I don't think we want people to be able to do that.
Okay.
I had a concern about 633.6, which is the annual registration requirement. I believe this would be the only such class of businesses in the municipality that would have such a requirement. And I think that would be burdensome to enforce. And I would move to strike the annual registration requirement. I'm not making a motion, I'm saying I would.
Yeah, I understand. Ian's writing it all down.
Yes, I'm adding it to the list, and then we can kind of discuss it holistically, I think would be probably the best way to go about it. I know that Paul Ostergaard, one of the board members who's not present tonight, but he had sent some comments by email too. I could read those as well. So he said that he would request that the 20% shelf space maximum for smoke shop products be reduced. He says that he basically works out the math of some of it, saying that a shop with 500 feet of shelf space would be able to devote 100 of that to smoke products. With that, if they had 500 feet of shelf space, but if they did 99 feet, then they would be kind of under the limit. So he suggested basically saying within the central business district, which, we have it defined as a smoke shop can be a conditional use in C2. I think Paul's read of it was that if a retail store in the C1 district, the central business district, had less than 20% shelf space dedicated to these products, that then they could have those but not qualify as a smoke shop under our definition. So his recommendation was to limit it to like 5 or 10% in other zoning districts. if that makes sense. So right now.
So not in the C2, but in
Right,
other
so
zoning
right now it
districts.
says, like, smoke shops shall be permitted in the C2 district as a conditional use. I think his recommendation was to add another clause here that would say something to the extent of, and I'm kind of making this up based on his email, but something to the extent of, in the C1 district and central business district, no more than 5% of shelf space may be dedicated to smoke shop products or something
I
along those
understand.
lines.
So it wouldn't be a smoke shop.
It wouldn't be a smoke shop, right, but if a, retail store, I'll use a ridiculous example, but if.
Grandpa Joe's.
Okay, I was gonna say South Hills Eye is a ridiculous example, but yes, if Grandpa Joe's, that's probably a better example as a retail store. If Grandpa Joe's dedicated 19% of their shelf space to these products, they wouldn't qualify as a smoke shop because they wouldn't hit that 20%. So they could theoretically do that within the central business district. So I think Paul's recommendation was within the CBD and the C1 district. And just for reference for anyone following along, CBD, Central Business District, is basically uptown here on Washington Road. C1 is our neighborhood commercial district, so that's Beverly Road, Castle Shannon Boulevard, places like that. So the C2 districts that we're talking about is our highway commercial areas. So that's like the Galleria area, Shop and Save, Virginia Manor Shops, Cochrane Road where CVS is, those kind of places. So that, I hope, correctly summarizes Paul's comments.
As a real quick opinion question to the board and to Ian and Dan. 633.5, where you say drive-through windows are prohibited. Should we cover all of our bases and drive-through and walk-up windows should be prohibited? Just to say it.
I thought there was a section of code that only drive-through windows are permitted for banks or something like that. Is that correct?
There is, at least
So
in
this
the
would be
uptown
redundant.
district. I think there are provisions regarding drive-throughs in the C2 district as well, but to the point about walk-up windows, we can easily add that in.
I know it's petty, but it's.
Yeah.
Someone can find it.
And the description of the smoke shop is really, do we feel it is specific enough in terms of paraphernalia used to actually smoke? Because we talk about, well, we do talk about hookahs and bongs and pipes. I think it covers it.
One other option, and this is just an idea I had, if the board wants to consider it, and I will say in full disclosure, I had this idea like over the weekend, so it was well after this was published. But one thing we could consider is to break out the definition, if following up on kind of Paul's comment about the, I'll call it merchandise, paraphernalia, whatever we want to call it, if we wanted to have a definition for like smoke shop products that includes all the, both, cigarettes, cigars, tobacco, and then all the other vape stuff, the Delta 8 stuff, the hookahs, bongs, pipes, all that, kind of all the paraphernalia stuff, have a definition for smoke shop merchandise, and then also have a definition for what a smoke shop is, then we could kind of break the definition apart into two sections, and then really, I guess, tighten up the definition of a smoke shop as a retail business with more than 20% of products or whatever for smoke shop merchandise, and then have a subsequent definition for what smoke shop merchandise includes. So it's just an idea I'll throw out to the board if you like it. If you don't like it, that's totally fine, but.
When you say that it says more than 20% of its products, so are we literally counting the number of products for sale at a store and then saying, okay, you sell 123 products, here's 20%? Or is it 20% of the sales, the revenue, the income? Like,
Yes.
what is that 20% supposed to be?
That's a very good question. In our benchmarking, there were different definitions used by different communities. So some communities defined it as a percentage of sales, which required the smoke shops to, annually say what their, or like Giant Eagle would have to annually submit a report and say, this is our total sales and this is how many cigarettes were sold. So we're not a smoke shop because we're under that. I think that would be administratively burdensome to try and do it by percentage of sales personally. But I know there was some discussion by the planning board. At least I had a couple members ask me about kind of the what metric we're using, to your point, whether it's 20% of shelf space, 20% of retail floor area, 20% of products sold. So if that's something that the board would like to see retweaked or tightened up, we could recommend that too.
I look at this and I think you don't necessarily have to have it on display for someone to just walk up to the counter and say, oh, I would like a, whatever it is, an XYZ product, right? And so, I do see it says storage, but that means, oh, you have it behind the counter. So like, it makes enforcement very difficult, I think. And it's just a challenge overall with just that definition, especially when you say 20%. Because what if it's 21%? What is 19% if you move things around? 20% is just a difficult thing to measure.
I will say from a enforcement standpoint, display space or retail floor area or shelf space, one of those metrics is probably the easiest to do because our, code enforcement officers could go in literally with a tape measure and figure things out. Counting number of products, to your point, would be extremely difficult, especially if it was like Grandpa Joe's, for instance, that sells literally, hundreds of thousands of pieces of candy. So I think, to your point in the definition, there are kind of two different spots where it references that 20% number. And the definition we have here was kind of pulled together from several different ordinances that we benchmarked against. So, I think tightening that up does make some sense from an enforcement standpoint.
I think where you're talking 20%, display, there's a world where they could have a back room, right? So they have 20, they're right at that 20% threshold. That doesn't mean they don't have a whole bunch of it behind the thing. So I think tightening that, some sort of measurement, because then counting the supplies, doing the receipts, checking all of that, that's going to be pretty onerous, but some way to measure it physically is critical.
So does the board have a consensus thought on whether, I'll just throw out two options. If there's another one, that's fine, but whether shelf space or retail floor plus storage area would be better?
Retail floor is probably the easiest to measure, I would think. Having said that, you could just have a walk-up counter though, and it was basically zero retail floor space, and you just ask the clerk. And how, that's be a challenge.
I mean, you do define display space here as products that's devoted to the storage, display, consumption, or sale. I think it would be easier for someone to get around the retail floor area than it would be the display space if you're counting the storage.
Display plus storage, basically.
Because you're right, you could just keep your product behind somewhere.
Does the Commonwealth require any sort of licensure to sell these products?
Not currently. I know there's a few bills that are in front of the State House and State Senate to regulate these, but we do have some clauses in our current ordinance with regards to medical marijuana about being licensed. And I think there was one line in here, so 633.6, or wait, no, sorry, that's not the right one. 633.6.3, the second half of that proof of any applicable licenses from the appropriate state and county agencies. If the board is recommending removing the registration section, I would recommend keeping that part of it, because that language is basically the same as what we have for medical marijuana facilities, and that kind of sets us up that if the state does require licensing at a future point in time, we already have it in our code that they have to provide those licenses to us.
Well, in a way, that can be used for the smoke shop. If your business has this license, then we're gonna define it as a smoke shop. That's it. We don't have to worry about, space or footage or 20% or anything. It's, if you have the license, we're gonna define you that way.
I think the challenge is like a vape shop or something like that would probably, if the state put those requirements in, have to have that. But it's the, Giant Eagle selling cigarettes behind a counter, does Giant Eagle get defined as a smoke shop or not, right? So I think that was one of the challenges we had when we were preparing this is, and I have no idea what Giant Eagle's floor space for everything is, right? But I will say the current places like Giant Eagle, Shop and Save, our gas stations, the Sunoco stations, the Get Go at the bottom of Washington Road, those are all in C2 districts as they are, which is where we're trying to push these to anyways as a conditional use. So, those places, even if they had anyone that exists when this passes will be existing non-conforming basically, but even if those places were above the 20% threshold, those are all in the C2 district as it is. The only one that's not is the smoke shop that's here in Uptown right now.
I mean, the Get Go you mentioned is a very small building, right? So it is conceivable that they have, and they sell a lot of cigarettes, right? So it's conceivable that they might hit that 20% once you hit the cigarettes. And it's like, okay, but that's a gas station.
Right.
So could it be that we look at, if we can tell what a primary usage, so it's gasoline or groceries or whatever, and if there's a primary use for the store, then it's not a smoke shop. But if we can't find any other primary use and they sell the product, then it is. Is that a possible kind of workaround where we're not catching up Giant Eagle and Get Go and things like that?
I think in that case, we'd have to have something concrete in the ordinance to be able to use.
Sure.
So I think to that point, that's where some communities have landed on the percentage of sales and show us where your sales are.
Sure.
So I think that's probably why those communities landed with percent of sales.
Well, sales, at least I believe sales of cigarettes have a different sales tax that they have to remit back to the Commonwealth?
I believe so, yes.
So you could probably just inquire, like, okay, are you remitting this as a part of your sales tax? So in a way, that might be easier.
For cigarettes, but like vape doesn't currently have that,
okay,
right? So,
all right.
Yeah, I know, it's a challenge. It's, it's not an easy one to tackle.
Sure.
And I appreciate the board taking the time to think through all this, because this is not the most cut and dry way to define things, because there's so many different things out there, right? There's vape, there's the Delta 8 stuff, there's the THC stuff, there's the CBD stuff, plus all the other paraphernalia for consuming. And I will say on the consumption note, the current definition does include like floor area used towards both display and consumption. So the current definition for a smoke shop would include like a hookah lounge or a cigar bar or something like that as well.
So I do think the having the conditional use actually gives the township a lot of flexibility on this. And so that they don't necessarily have to, identify all the things. They can just ask for, hey, what's the evidence and what do we have in front of us? And so it gives the township the ability to control it in a structured way without having to foresee everything that it could possibly be.
Yeah.
So I do certainly appreciate the conditional use. But the conditional use can actually override some of these things as well, because the conditional use is setting some of these parameters. So, I'll give you the example of the 63.4, where it's no closer than 3,000 feet from any other smoke shop. Okay, well, that can be a part of the conditional use. You don't necessarily have to put that in the parameter. I worry about that because our neighboring community, Dormont, has smoke shops. And so by this, nobody would be able to put a Mount Lebanon smoke shop within that range of a Dormont smoke shop, but it's not, because it's not specific enough to say 3,000 within Mount Lebanon as the township. So we're having to look at what Dormont has decided to control where our smoke shops are located. And so that's a challenge in and of itself, I would think.
It is, I think, I would say that putting a requirement like that in our code, though, and having that text would mean that a potential applicant who wanted to open one would have to prove that there's not one within that radius from their location. Same with the schools, parks, playgrounds clause, right? That, they're going to have to show kind of how far they are from certain things.
But that could also be solved just under conditional use in and of itself without explicitly outlining it.
We don't, I think those distance boundaries are things we should define because if one applied, so let's just say there's an existing smoke shop right now at the old Dairy Queen on McFarland Road. Let's say another one applied to open, I'll just hypothetically make up an example. Let's say the Fireplace store went out of business and a smoke shop decided to move in there and have a grand emporium in that giant building. They would apply through the conditional use process, which goes to the planning board first for a recommendation, then on to the commission. If there's not a clause in the ordinance as giving us the ability to turn it down for a reason, then we don't have something in there to say, oh no, you have another one within 3,000 feet of you. So the conditional use really defines the process more. And the commission, when they issue the conditional use decision, can put additional conditions on. For instance, the commission could say, okay, well, let's use a different example. Let's say, CVS on Cochrane Road, one wanted to open there. The commission could say, okay, there's none within 3,000 feet of you. You are farther than the 500 feet from schools, playgrounds, all the other stuff. But Cochrane Road is a main walking route to school because the high school is right there. So we're going to put an additional condition on that your hours of operation have to be between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. so that you're not open when kids are walking to school in the mornings. Like that's a condition that the commission could put on later, but a distance requirement for where they're allowed to locate, we can't really tack that on later. That's really one that should be in the ordinance to begin with.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. I think if somebody has like I say, in the first example that you gave with, like I say, right across the municipal boundary, and we're going to measure where we can put our business based on what a different township has approved. I don't like being beholden to their rules.
That makes sense.
Right. So
yes.
if we're gonna do it, say, from any other, say it's 3,000, from any other smoke shop within Mount Lebanon municipality or township, that is. It would be my suggestion, as opposed to just any smoke shop anywhere. In theory, and the reason, in theory, what if the other municipalities like all decided to border Mount Lebanon with their smoke shops and zero it out because there's basically no place then within 3,000 feet where you could put one in because we're relying on what other townships are doing.
I see. So what you're saying is it potentially could, based on the available locations, if there were some in other communities, if you drew those circles around existing ones, the existing C2 district may all be covered because of where ones are located in other communities. So we would essentially be creating a use that there's no location for.
Potentially.
Okay, I see your point. I will say that most of our C2 areas are kind of on the fringes of the community, between like the Galleria area to the south, which borders kind of both Upper St. Clair and Bethel. To the north, the McFarland area, which borders Dormont, and then the end of McFarland up onto Washington Road, kind of across from Scott Road, Piermont, which borders Dormont. The Virginia Manor Shops area, which borders Scott Township. There is the Cochrane Road area, though, around CVS, going from, basically from the intersection with Cedar up to Bower Hill, which is zoned as C2, which would be farther than 3,000 feet away from a neighboring community. So that would, if the board recommends it based on Mount Lebanon, then that's what I'll kind of propose to push forward. I'm doing what the board recommends here, right? We're just discussing, but I would say that there is that area on Cochrane Road right now that is more than 3,000 feet away from any of the municipal borders.
So in essence, there'd be one area in the entire township where it's relocated. And then maybe one goes in and that's it. So one for the entire township.
If there were
that's,
ones in adjoining communities, yeah.
Sure.
There's also the Castle Shannon Boulevard, where it kind of makes the intersection with Scott Road around there. There are some C2 zone properties, kind of like where the Ivy Inn used to be. Those might be more than 3,000 feet away from the Castle Shannon border, which is Cook Lane. Let me see, I can measure that real quick here.
We don't have to, go into that.
Right.
Specific.
There's a smoke shop on Mountain Boulevard now. In Castle Shannon.
Yeah.
I think just.
Those are, the farthest one of those is about 2,500 feet away from the municipal border on Cook Lane, so. To your point, yeah, I think the Cochrane Road one would be the only one where it wouldn't necessarily be beholden to what's in another community. So,
can you recap for us?
I can recap, yes. I'm looking through my notes here from the questions that were asked of me by email before the meeting too, to see if there was anything else that we didn't cover. Okay, so here's what I have so far. So in 633.2, which is the distance from schools, parks, playgrounds, et cetera, defined as the same measurement in 633.4, which is measured from the closest point of the applicable property boundaries. In 633.5, add walk-up windows along with drive-throughs. Strike the registration section 633.6 with the exception of the licenses from appropriate state and county agencies.
Yep.
Add a prohibition on self-service. Define, okay, I'll get to the definitions last. Add a standard that in the C1 district and central business district, no more than 5% of shelf space can be used for smoke shop products. In 633.4, what we just discussed, should the distance be based on a distance within Mount Lebanon or any? And that would probably apply the same to 633.2 based on our previous discussion of have the definitions reflect each other there.
Yes.
And then finally, in the definitions section, which is section 4 of the proposed ordinance, base it on, I had display plus storage space or shelf space. There was a lot of discussion there, but not really a formal kind of cohesive thought from the group. But if there's anything I missed, that was the notes I had.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine too. I think as long as display space includes all the shelving dedicated to storage.
Okay.
Now, is that, say it's a 5-shelf bookshelf in the back, are we counting each shelf or are we
Yep.
counting?
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else from the board on this?
Oh, also, I threw out the idea of separating the definition of a smoke shop from smoke shop or smoke shop products or something like that. I don't know what the board thinks about that. Like I said, I had that over the weekend when I read Paul's email.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I guess the smoke shop or products cover chewing, any of the other things that are not specifically smoked.
Yeah, I was
Okay,
thinking kind of the
ingested.
whole middle section of the definition that defines all the different things. So basically, from the quote, alternative nicotine products refers to any, and I guess we could just call it alternative nicotine or alternative nicotine products. So from, I guess, the end of the first sentence, the beginning of that second sentence, all the way through the end of similar psychoactive substances not regulated as controlled substances under state or federal law. That whole section kind of becomes its own definition. And then if the board wants to do Paul's thing of creating that standard in C1 and CBD that only 5% of shelf space can be used for those products, then we have that definition of those products. Oh, I would probably also add, Paul didn't put this in his email, but just thinking about it, if we're saying we want smoke shops, which includes consumption, so that includes cigar bars, hookah lounges, things like that, only to be in C2, in that C1 standard, we should probably say like consumption in a store is not allowed also.
Yeah, in C1.
Yeah. And yeah. And I guess since I mentioned it, not to just add more things to the board, but since I mentioned it kind of as we were talking about the conditional use process, I know the city of Pittsburgh recently pushed forward an ordinance, and in their ordinance, it did have, and that was also, after we wrote this, but theirs, I believe, had hours of operation restrictions. So I don't know if the board wants to, within the ordinance itself, define hours of operation, or if they want to leave that open to kind of allowing the board to make a recommendation, the commission to include it in the conditional use decision of when they're allowed to be open. I'll kind of throw that out there too.
We don't restrict it at all right now in C2, correct?
Let me check on that real quick. So that just came to my head right now, so I didn't have my research on that
Any
one.
class of businesses that are restricted?
We do.
What would that be?
I know in the C1 neighborhood commercial district, there are restrictions on retail sales and service operating between 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I think bar, cocktail lounge, tavern, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Let me check on the other zoning districts here real quick.
So the saloon is supposed to close at 11?
No, saloon's in Central Business District.
Oh.
That was C1, so that's like Beverly Road.
I mean, if it's located in C2, that just has the same class of hours as every other store in C2, I don't think you would necessarily need to call it out separately.
Yeah, so in C2, I don't see any that have hourly restrictions. Let me check Central Business District here. I don't see any with hourly restrictions in the Central Business District either. So it's just the C1 neighborhood commercial, so like Beverly Road, Castle Shannon Boulevard, like where Hitchhiker is, have those restrictions because that's more the neighborhood scale commercial.
What are those times again? I'm sorry.
6 a.m. to 11 p.m.
But they are allowed to be open.
That they're allowed to be open, yes. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we can put the recommendation just to look at that, just to make sure that it's kind of consistent.
Yeah, and that's for medical clinics, offices, bars, cocktail lounge, tavern. I I believe Hitchhiker is classified as a brewery or a brew pub, which has a separate definition. But, I mean, if there was, if, you know, to get back to the example we talked about earlier of, you know, Cochrane Road, while it is outside that 500 feet from the high school, if there was a thought that, and like I said, the commission or planning board, when you know, if a business came in and said, we want a conditional use approval, the board could always make a recommendation at that time that, you know, conditioned upon hours of operation, not opening until 9 a.m. so that it's not open while kids are walking to school. That would be a valid condition to place on a potential approval, and the commission could include that as part of a conditional use decision. So that's one of those ones where you could include it in the ordinance if you want to, or you could just consider that kind of as part of the review process for any potential applications, depending on where they're located. Because like hypothetically, right, a smoke shop within the Galleria may be looked at differently than a smoke shop on Cochrane Road. Or maybe not. I'm just trying to be comprehensive to make sure I get everything on my list here.
I'm sure I want to try to throw a time in now.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like a case by case basis.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So given the fact that we completely rewrote that ordinance,
Yes.
there's no need for a motion, right?
Motion to table.
So I would say if the planning board wants to, I'll say, request, or you can even do it by motion if you want to, but basically for our records, for the minutes, we can just record it as the planning board requests that the municipal planner and solicitor revise the ordinance based on these comments and brings it back to the planning board for a subsequent review. And then after that, we can also, you know, amend it and send it to Allegheny County for review as well, to kind of keep the process moving forward. If so just the one question mark I had on here was about the distance requirements. So should the distance requirements be based on distance in Mount Lebanon only, or any of those types of uses? I'll throw that to the board for your opinion. I understand Matthew's point. Now, it took me a while to get there.
I don't know if you know, Ian, but is Dormont considering their own?
I believe they are.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what all their regulations are going to be, but I
Great.
believe they are.
They're a little late. So by inference, the zoning code through its entirety relates to what occurs within the municipality. So do we have to say within the municipality on that line?
I would say if you want it to specifically be from Mount Lebanon places, then you probably should say, because even in the prior 633.2, right, school, public park, playground, things like that, you could make the case that the one on McFarland Road is across from Dormont Park, Dormont Pool, so that's closer than 500 feet, even though it's a park in a different community. So I think if we specifically want to say, I think the board should make a recommendation on whether it's Mount Lebanon only or consideration for what's in our adjoining communities.
There's an ambiguity, and so we just need to figure out which way it falls so that it's not an issue down the road. We can go either way, but we should say one or the other.
Given the intermix of business districts and how like I think of Cochran Road, because I live in that area. One side's Scott Township, one side's Mount Lebanon. So you have that's, things are intermixed, so.
Right.
Keeping it, considering the other community, I was.
And if we would have
my
had
10 cents in.
this in place and didn't define 500 feet in Mount Lebanon, the Dairy Queen smoke shop couldn't go in.
Correct. If, assuming they would have had to come to the planning board, and then there probably would have had to be a discussion, so there would have had to be some interpretation there, right? That, assuming the board defined it as 500 feet from any public park, then correct, yes, the Dairy Queen one could not have gone in.
And I think that would, if the intent here is to regulate these, that public park is, people in Mount Lebanon are using that public
Yeah.
park and
yes.
vice versa.
Yes.
Like it is, so yeah, I think it's a good neighbor type of situation to do a distance from use and not restrictive of municipality.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so based on any, okay. So maybe that's as simple as changing it to within 500 feet of any existing school, park, playground, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually just one, because it says and, so just change and to any. That would be, that's it, that one's an easy change, okay. All right,
Are these distance requirements that we're recommending, suggesting, is this setting precedence in the zoning code? Is this applied to any other kind of use, or?
yes, good question. So the distance requirements on the schools, parks, playgrounds, all of those are the same as our definition for, or restriction, I'll say, for medical marijuana facilities. So that section, I pretty much,
Does that say any?
that says,
Doesn't
I
say
will,
within,
Something about liquor licenses too, don't we?
I don't think we restrict it by liquor licenses, but I will, it says, medical marijuana facilities shall not be established or operate within 500 feet of an existing school, public playground, public park, daycare, or nursery school, or place of worship.
Which is what this proposes now.
Yes, we basically copied the language over. The only
And I think it's
change,
fine.
yeah.
I don't even think we need to change it. Maybe
no for enforcement, yeah.
no for enforcement, or even, regardless of the township location or whatever, regardless of the, and then that very clearly clarifies it.
Gotcha. So, yeah, the only change here for 633.2 was when I was reviewing it, it says daycare in the medical marijuana one, but in our actual definitions in the code, we have like 6 different definitions of daycare, so I actually spelled out the defined terms in this one, and then we also just added the medical marijuana uses to this one as well. But other than that, it's functionally the same.
We should just overhaul the whole zoning code.
We are actually working on that right now. Yes. So, okay, so I have a good list. So just straw poll from the board, generally speaking, everyone is in favor of all the things that we referenced. And I will prepare that with the solicitor, and then we'll bring it back to the board for review. Just from a time frame standpoint, because Allegheny County has a 45-day review period, once I make these revisions, is the board okay with me also sending it to the county for another review so the board can see the county review letter? Okay, cool. We'll do that because for 2 reasons. Number 1, I don't believe we have any pending applications, but number 2, I believe several board members volunteer at the polls for Election Day, and primary Election Day is also the 3rd Tuesday of May. So I don't think we would have a quorum that day anyway, so we won't be having a May meeting, so the next time the board could review it would be June anyways, but that would probably sync up well with the 45-day county review period. So I should be able to get this revised, send it down to the county, and I'll circulate a draft by email to the board to look at too.
Okay.
Cool.
Now's the time for citizens' comments. No, come on. Name and address, please.
My name is Jacob Hornacek, 842 Livingston Drive. So specifically, I
I gotta pull up my notes one sec. So currently, there are no municipal level restrictions on street view advertising for vape shops at all, allowing the current one, Puff Diggity, down the street, to display smoking paraphernalia, cigars, small vapes, e-cigarettes, everything in its window, in full view of pedestrians, along with general smoking advertisements. And one of those general smoking advertisements is a Kratom sign. Now, if you don't know what Kratom is a currently, let's see here, addictive, unregulated natural opioid that is subject of a current PA Senate bill to ban its manufacture and sale in the Commonwealth. Multiple overdose deaths have been linked to Kratom and synthetic Kratom around the country. Currently, anyone of any age can buy Kratom products in Pennsylvania. There are no age restrictions. Anyone can go in and buy it, high schooler, middle schooler, whatever. And there's an ad for it on that building. So let's see. Ross Township, which recently introduced similar zoning rules for vape shops as described in the proposed zoning update, is currently discussing a measure to limit bright signage and advertisements like that on vape shops, in addition to like sort of garish designs. But I think our aesthetic kind of zoning code is already pretty good with dealing with that sort of thing. And I think regulation involving limited street visibility for a store that primarily sells nicotine is appropriate. It's common in other communities to require frosted or concealed windows for vape shops and other stuff of that nature. Medical marijuana facilities in the Commonwealth already can't display their products through a window. And I think that's just a slight oversight because it's not a municipal code and this stuff is technically kind of unregulated at the state level. Additionally, I think there should be some kind of additional advertising restrictions for vape shops within a mile of a school, in addition to the current distance requirement in the zoning code, just because of, it's a walking community. I used to walk down the street every day coming home and we would pass by the vape shop. Also, it's next to an ice cream parlor and across the street from a candy store. And just to sum up, I think vape shops should be required to limit the visibility of their products from a street view and restrict their signage to basic business signs, open, the name of the store, operating hours with like no product advertisements, in addition to the new zoning ordinance. And there's some precedence for that with laws for minor safety in other parts of the country and in other parts of PA. And I guess just one last rider. Even when I was in high school, everybody knew if you walked in there, you could buy something and leave. So I think restricting the visibility of it, if we can't outright restrict the legality of it, is a compromise. So, all right, thank you for my time.
Would the board like to add? I made a note of display of smoke shop products in street-facing windows prohibited, and I'm assuming the board would like to see that apply in all districts.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's a
okay.
good suggestion, thank you.
Got it. Yep.
All right, the next regularly scheduled meeting for the Mount Lebanon Planning Board is Tuesday, May 19th, 2026 at 7 p.m. All municipal meetings now have Zoom webinar component to enable residents to attend meetings either virtually or in person. Did we have anyone on Zoom tonight? Don't think so?
One participant.
Yeah, they've been. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Who made that motion?
I did.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had it for the record. Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Jake, nice suggestion.